So time to do our first speedrun of this 200th speedrun special. Or is it? So yeah, I said I have some special surprises in store for this episode, and this is the first one. So, I feel like over the past few sessions I have been expressing some concern over the fact that I have gotten more bullish over time. Perhaps, in fact, too bullish even. So, I decided to actually prove this theory, or try to disprove this theory, at least. So I decided to actually go back through all the data of all the sessions and speedruns done so far and try to figure out, am I in fact more bullish than I was at the start when I began these back in February? So that's what I did here. As you can see, this chart shows how many sessions have there been so far? 1, 2, I probably should have counted these earlier. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Jeez, has it really been 13? That means this is number 14. Whew, okay. But yeah, so I decided to go back to the data, chart it, using the magic of pivot tables. If you don't know what a pivot table is, it is one of the most powerful tools any person can ever use on a computer ever. It's amazing. But yeah, I used that, and then I charted out the data, and this is what we have, showing the number of buys, holds, and sells that I have given to stocks during each session over time, and I was surprised by this. I was extremely surprised to find that my bullishness, I think, looking at this chart, has remained fairly steady over time. Sure, there are some drastic changes, like all of a sudden on the session for 27 February, I'm feeling a bit more bearish than usual, considering the amount of sells I gave that day. Apparently, I also went on a bearish streak on 27 March. But the rest is fairly the same. I think a good example of things staying reasonably consistent over time is taking a look at the first session, 6 February, and the most recent session, 8 May. I did 16 runs both days. There were 2 sells. The only difference is that I gave one more buy on this first session than I did on this last session. So you could almost argue that if you really want to go off of just these numbers, I have gotten even less bullish over time. If you really want to just go off these numbers. Just looking at these 2 sessions, because sure, it's not much of a difference, but the difference is that I gave things one less buy, and I changed that buy to a hold for something. So yeah, you could almost argue that I have gotten more bearish over time. And I think it was this 24 April session where I really started to worry about my bullishness, or being too bullish rather, because that was the first session in which I did not give anything a sell. It's also the session that was the shortest. I've never had a session. I mean, this session is probably going to be short, like I've already said. But that's the first session where I had below 14 even. I did 10 that day. And if you take this first session, this most recent session, as kind of the standard, then this is almost well within the... I'm not a statistics guy. I don't know what to call it. Standard deviation? I know it's a term. I don't really entirely know what it means, but I'm going to go ahead and use it here, pretending I know what it means. It is well within the standard deviation of the mean of the statistics. Yes, and pushes up glasses. So yeah, and actually something else I didn't realize, I could have sworn that I never did 16 in a run before. Last session was a long session, and I thought 8 May, I had never done 16 runs before that. No, I was wrong. I haven't done 16 in a while. It's been 7 sessions since I did 16 before that, but no, I've done 16 before. I did 16 on 20 March, I did 16 on 27 February, I did 17 on 20 February, and I did 16 during the first session also. So, And I guess this brings up the question of why am I concerned that I had become too bullish? Being too bullish kind of scares me, and I know that sounds weird, but it kind of does, because you can become, not that I am putting my money's worth into the calls that I'm making, because again I'm kind of just doing this for fun and kind of just a general test of my own picking skills. But if I was, you can lose a lot more money by making a wrong buy call than you can by making a wrong sell call. Because what happens when you make a wrong buy call? You buy something and it goes down, you lose money. Okay. What happens if you make a wrong sell call? Well, if you already own it, then it's possible that you could gain money rather than not gaining more money, if that makes sense. I feel like I'm not making sense in that case. But that's not really the specific situation that I wanted to get to. What I wanted to get to the situation is that if you make a sell call and you don't own it, what does that mean? Don't buy it. Okay. So what happens if the sell call is wrong? You didn't lose any money. You didn't gain any money, but you didn't lose anything. You missed out on gains, but you're still you didn't lose anything. So that's kind of why being too bullish scares me a little bit. I know it's a bit unpractical, given the fact that I am not acting on any of the calls I make, but it's still the general sentiment I have. Because if anybody does act on these calls, then that's my concern, I guess. Not that I'm saying you should. Again, I give a disclaimer at the start of every session saying that, again, I am just some guy on the internet and listen to me at your own risk. But that's the general sentiment that makes me a bit worried about being too bullish. So that's why I started to get those concerns, and thus I wanted to look at this data and figure out if I've gotten perhaps a little too bullish. Which apparently I don't think I have. I remained fairly steady aside from sudden bull spikes, sudden bear spikes, which actually, one last thing that I wanted to check is... Hold on, let me move this... Wait, that's my map. Let me minus that. I wanted to move this here, because not only did I want to show off this chart, I wanted to show off this chart and how it reflects the market over time. And I think it'll become obvious what I mean by that once I show you what I want to show you here. Also, do I want to become famous? No. Being famous seems kind of hard, honestly. And do I want to buy followers? No. F off with that. If I buy followers, that is less money for me to invest in stonks. And that is suboptimal. Anyway. So what I wanted to do real quick, as part of a wrap-up of this kind of bullish-bearish overtime analysis, is map the outcomes of these sessions to the general market over time. So the chart I have down here is SPY, S&P 500, which I think is probably the best general market indicator over time. And specifically what I wanted to look at is when I suddenly have big bearish and bullish moves. Because I feel like my picks actually track the market better than I expected. So, for example, let me close this window. That's super annoying. So, wait, why does it start in March? No, I wanted February. Okay, there we go. That's better. So February 6th is when I started. That's the weekend between these two dates. Things have been going good. Good before that. That week was a pretty good week. Market went up all that week. Great. What happens next week? Things are kind of flat. And then suddenly on 13 February, I find myself being a little more bearish than I was before. Okay? So what happens next week? Things continue to be flat and also start to go down a little. However, what I can't explain is why I was even more bullish than I was the previous week, given the outcome of the week prior to 20 February. Now, it could be that I just happened to roll stocks that I found to be bullish. You know, again, these are random stocks I'm looking at. It's all a roll of the dice. So that's very possible. However, the one that I really wanted to look at was 27 February, because that was, prior to that was a rough week. There's the 26th and there's the 1st. So this week here, as you can see, very rough. A little bit of a spike and then suddenly, not a crash, I don't want to call it a crash, but it wasn't looking good. Prices going down, increasing volume too, as you can see. That's usually not a good sign. The VIX probably started to spike around this time also. And I think the session on 27 February reacts, or rather is maybe a bit of a knee-jerk reaction to the market that week. Hence why I had the most sells that session that I have had thus far, and since then, I think. I had 6 sells that day. 27 March was 5, but I also did 2 less that day. So you could argue I was just as bearish as 27 March. So you know what? Just to wrap up this analysis real quick. Let's fast forward to 27 March. Well, actually, no. I want to look at 20 March first, because what happened prior to 20 March? Where's 20 March? There is 319 and there's 322. I'm surprised I was bullish on 20 March, because that was an arguably just as bad week, but it could have been a lessons learned from this, because this was a rough week back here prior to 27 March, but it started to recover a little bit. Well, a little bit. More recovery here, so maybe I was thinking, oh, you know, I've seen this kind of quick crash before. It's not gonna be anything. We're gonna you know, shove it off and be fine. That might have been what I was thinking. And then we have 27 March coming up, where I gave things more sells. It's very possible that after another week of generally continuing downtrends, I start to think maybe this drop is for real and is not going to recover as fast as or as effectively as the last one. And then this kind of the rest here, I'm not really too sure what to make of these. Things have been kind of flat and up and down for the past 2 months or so, but I've just been, I think my picks for that time frame have been generally on par with the picks in general. I mean, all this analysis also could just be complete bunk. It could have literally just been a roll of the dice, and I only had 6 sells this day because the tool took me to 6 stocks that happened to be trash, and thus I was forced to give 6 sells that day. That could be the case too. All of this, comparing it to the S&P chart, could be just, you know, me looking for patterns that don't exist. Kind of like when you were back in school and in English class, and the teacher asks, "Oh, what did the author mean when he said this and made this character do that?" "Oh, well, it's a reflection of his time when he was, you know, an orphan in Victorian Britain." No, it could just have been that's what he needed to do to move the plot along. Not everything has to have meaning, you know? Stuff used to get on my nerves. Yeah, so I think I've rambled on enough about this. This is generally what I wanted to show. Not only to talk this through with you, the viewer, but also to prove to myself that my fears of being a little too bullish are unfound, I think. So, and perhaps I'll do another analysis like this, another, 13 sessions down the line. So cool.